5, 4, 3. CGP Video Pictures presents Trek Tonight Season 2. This week, Strange New Worlds. With your hosts, Christopher Pitcher, Leo Byrne-Janicek, and Keith Jacobson. Tonight's review, Lost in Translation. Now live from New York City, Wilmington, Delaware, and Everett, Washington, it's Trek Tonight. Whoa, look at us.
Whoa, damn.
There we go. Hey, Trekkers, welcome.
That was kind of frightening, actually.
It's very distracting. It was like one of those paperback books where they show the three characters.
Yes.
The three leads, it's like... Bum. Yeah. Anyway, clearly, as you can see, I give a nod to the 23rd century where there's a grammatical rule that says you can only use one A in a word. So we didn't have the letter A in the word translation. But anyway, hey guys, this was a really fun episode.
It was.
I quite enjoyed it. Yes.
Yep. We have a focus on Lieutenant Uhura, which is great.
Ensign now.
Oh, she's not
Ensign.
Right.
That's right.
That's right. That still throws me when I hear it, because I know that she was an ensign, but then all of a sudden I keep wanting to say,
No, it's understandable.
"Oh, Lieutenant." But at any rate, she's hearing a sound that no one else can hear, and as this goes on, she's also overworked and overexhausted because she's got a lot on her mind. But she starts to see all of these walking nightmare hallucinations, and she ends up teaming up with Captain Kirk to try to he's not a captain now.
He's still a lieutenant, but he's about to become the youngest XO first officer in the fleet on the Farragut.
Yes. Which leads into him being the youngest captain in the fleet.
Yes.
Yeah. But at any rate, and so he helps her try to solve the problem, and they end up sorting it out. What did you guys think?
Keith, why don't you go first?
Yeah.
How can I follow that?
Yeah.
Really, but
I really liked this episode a lot. I'm not going to say it was my favorite episode of this season so far, but I think it was a really strong episode. Lots of moments I liked. A couple little things that annoyed me couple little things that annoyed me, but for the most part, I really liked it a lot. Nothing, and when I say the little things that annoyed me, they didn't ruin the episode for me, but there were just a couple of things that just kind of,
right.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like that, but
yeah.
But overall, it was a really good episode. I really liked it.
Well, this brought back, we got this in both in video form and in hallucination form, your favorite character, Chief Engineer Hemmer.
Yes.
Who we had read that he was going to show up at some point in the season. We didn't know how. I thought this was an excellent way of doing it. Her is still grieving for the loss of Hemmer,
right.
As she is grieving for the loss of her family in that shuttle accident, which was referenced in the second episode of the first season. This was a very emotionally resonant episode. There was a lot of, and what was nice is, while certain things did get resolved, not everything was resolved. We got to see the fraternal sort of rivalry between Sam and Jim Kirk,
which was great.
At first, it was very good, that sort of good-natured ribbing.
Yeah.
Jim Kirk beams up and he's like, "Oh, this is, I can't believe they let you work here." He says, "Well, Captain Pike wanted the handsomest
Right.
Kirk's brother, serving on a ship, and they give each other a big hug. And he's, can I take you to the ship? Because Kirk is impressed by the Enterprise, as you would be. He says, yeah, as long as it ends at the bar. And they're like, ha, 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 ha. And then when they get to the bar, we find out that Kirk is getting this promotion. And we also find out that uh, George Kirk, their father, who was previously the youngest first officer in the fleet, um, does not seem to share Sam's enthusiasm for science, no, which also seems to be neither does Jim Kirk, who sort of is like, yeah, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
Um, and there seems to be some genuine tension between the two of them, which I found very interesting
Yeah.
because, as much as you might love your family, there's going to be tension at some
Yes.
point.
Right.
Um, Sam Kirk has not been overly present in this uh, this second season, but I think what we've gotten has been very good, and I liked him
It
in
is.
this episode.
I was really glad to see him because if you remember early in our season for this, he wasn't shown in any of the
Yeah.
promotional materials, and I thought, wow, did we lose Sam Kirk? And
Yeah.
I'm glad we didn't.
This
I like him.
this was my favorite appearance of Sam Kirk in Strange New Worlds to date.
Yes.
Previously, he has been played more as the I don't want to say bumbling exactly,
But sort of a
but
comic foil, like he's
yeah,
not, he's not the squared. I mean, he's not a coward, but he is a scientist. He's not like the man of action
or
sort of figure.
like they go to that the Comet of Doom, the Comet of Doom in the first season, and there's this big alien structure inside the building that they go in. This alien, onion thing,
Yes.
that Uhura is able to eventually sing to and get it to respond.
Right.
But what does happen? What does Kirk do before doing that? Hey, let's see the strange thing that we know absolutely nothing about and touch it. What could go wrong?
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Hey, I got a couple of comments here from the Peanut Gallery. Craig Lubin very kindly wishes my daughter Charlotte a happy birthday and a happy birthday to the moon
Yes.
landing.
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, and I don't think Charlotte knows that her birthday falls on the moon landing, so that was kind of cool. Gina says that, hey, all, great episode today. She really enjoyed it. And she said sibling rivalry for sure. So, yeah.
I did enjoy the sibling rivalry between Kirk and Sam, between Kirk and Sam, between Jim and Sam.
Right. And Scott Taylor is here, by the way. Gave us a thumbs up. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Scott.
Good to see you.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah. So, yeah, I thought that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it rang pretty true to me. When all of a sudden he just gets ticked off and leaves, I was just like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I do admit I mentioned, there were a couple little things that annoyed me.
Yes.
There was one little thing that did annoy me. Kirk, I have enjoyed the way the new guy is playing Kirk a lot. I'm not one of those old fuddy-duddies, that think if it's, well, I am an old fuddy-duddy, but I'm not one of those fuddy-duddies that is all upset that there's someone new playing Kirk, because Shatner's old, and if we're going to get Kirk stories, someone else is going to have to do it. Otherwise, we're not going to tell Kirk stories anymore, and it's like, and I kind of view it like in a comic book when a different artist takes over a comic book. I mean, Batman has had so many different looks, and sometimes you like the changes, sometimes you don't. But in the end, it's that, or you get no more Batman stories. And,
Right.
And I'm enjoying seeing. I'm sorry. What's the new guy's name? New Kirk's name?
The actor.
The actor.
I don't have it handy. I'm sorry.
Anyway, I'm enjoying seeing his portrayal, but I get the sibling rival thing. I'm fine with that. I think it was cool. I enjoyed seeing that. But the whole dismissiveness towards science, when the whole problem gets resolved, Sam says he's going to write a paper about everything.
Right.
Paul Wesley, by the way, is the actor's name. The actor's name is Paul Wesley.
Paul Wesley.
There
I
you go.
should know
Thank
that.
you, Will. Thank you.
Paul. Yeah. So Wesley's portrayal of Kirk, I think, is fine, but and I don't know if this was Wesley doing it or if it was just the way the story was written. I'm assuming it's the way the story was written, actually. But Sam says he's going to write a paper about the adventure that they just had.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, in the scientific journal, and Jim just rolls his eyes and just is so dismissive of it. And
Well, I think we can take a lot of stuff as read. I think clearly Sam has always had a scientific bent,
yes,
whereas Jim has not. I mean, he's not an idiot, but he's like that's not his main passion.
Right.
So I think I'm envisioning a lot of times in the past where, thank you, Gina,
Yeah.
where Sam has gone off on a tangent about science, and Jim is probably bored to tears.
Right.
So I'm taking that as sort of subtext. So
maybe okay.
what's interesting,
And again, we were saying in the green room a little bit, like when we talk about, which I think is a wonderful addition, although I don't know how it fits into canon, as I was saying before we went on air, the idea that Spock has this fastidious, almost bordering on OCD thing going with Sam Kirk, and that we saw another example of that again in last night's episode, I think is kind of fun. But as Leo said, we're seeing younger versions of these characters, and that's true. So it may be that Kirk hasn't been out there enough to truly appreciate the brilliance of science yet, and he hasn't had Spock to work with.
Right.
no, it's interesting. Kirk has this conversation with Laan. He was talking about how his dad was in Starfleet, and they'd be going to base to base to base, and he barely saw them, and his mom would always say, what he's doing is important. He's helping people who need it, and of course, as a child, you think, well, why isn't he? Why are those people more important than I am?
Right.
And because Kirk is sort of this guy he's a bit of a white knighter. He's a bit of a kind of guy who steps in when he sees something going on.
Right.
And I think that we're sometimes blind to the people closest to us. I think if Sam wasn't his brother, he would probably be a little more indulgent of his science passion. And I think he also, because he's the second son, because Sam's first name is George, he's named after his dad. They mentioned the Kelvin.
Right.
Nice little nod to that.
Yeah.
And I think Jim Kirk wishes he was George Kirk Jr. Because his career is mirroring his father's
Right.
in a certain degree, and I think there's that. Like he never says it, but I do. He's like, well, you do everything to avoid, that name, because he doesn't call him. He goes by his middle name, Sam.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of.
Well, is that when he says to him, Dad gave you his name and you spend your time wallowing in a science lab?
Yeah,
I don't know if
he
those
did
together or not, but that's how I remember.
Yeah, I think it's around there that he does say that.
Yeah.
Which is, for a man of action like Jim Kirk,
Yeah.
spending a lot of time in the lab seems like a waste of time when you should go be out there, discovering strange new worlds and having sex with alien women, I presume.
Hey, how did you enjoy?
Hold on. One quick second.
Yeah.
I'm about to say something that has never been said on the internet before.
What's that?
Leo, your well-reasoned argument has changed my mind.
Oh,
Whoa!
wow.
There you go. Another anniversary.
Yeah.
The time where something said on the internet has changed somebody's mind.
That's right.
So.
I'm going to reuse Gina's quote and say, I like it. Oh, anyway, how did you guys enjoy? I enjoyed it. The process of seeing Kirk as a younger man, and he just keeps sort of hitting on women and not getting anywhere. And I thought that was fun. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure he needs to get into the same bar room with Laan, and he'll do fine.
Yeah. Oh, I think you're right about that.
It's true, and there was that clip when he's trying to chat her up, and he's like, "I'm not hitting on you," and you sat next to me, and it's like, okay, and she's like,
Yeah.
"I got no time for your weird male energy right now," um, but you know, I like him as because he's a little brasher than Captain Kirk. Lieutenant Kirk
Yes.
still has that kind of that young man swagger. I mean, he was 36. That was the idea because he was the youngest captain in the fleet.
Right.
Um, but 36 is like you're a young man by most flag officer standards.
Right.
But he's now probably like, let's say he's if it's 7 years in the before the original series,
Right.
so he's like 29, 28,
Right.
still like still a young buck.
Yeah.
So I liked it, and it's interesting because in the J.J. Abrams film, the Kelvin verse, he
Yeah.
meets her for the first time in a bar and hits on her.
Right.
So a nice little nod to that. Um,
Yeah.
but I do like the actor. I think it is tough because Shatner's portrayal is iconic. There's just
Right.
no two ways about that. And I actually think Chris Pine does a good job as Kirk.
Yeah.
Um, he's got a lot of charisma, and he's kind of got that Kirk swagger because Kirk still had swagger when he was captain, but
Of
it was
course.
tempered by experience.
Yeah.
Um, so I like this guy. I think he looks enough like Kirk because people are like his hair's too dark, and it's like, listen,
Oh, I'm coming around to him. I'm really enjoying him as an actor. So
I am too.
yeah.
So
Visually, visually. I didn't buy into him when I first saw him. The first time you saw him last season, but I'm coming around to it. I think he's doing a very nice job with the role. So it
I
doesn't
agree.
matter visually what he looks like because he's doing a good job with the role. Keith, was there something else? You said you had a couple of things, or was that
Yeah. The let's talk about the relationship between Una and Pelia for a moment here.
okay?
Okay.
So there's this factory that there's this refinery that they are supposed to be fixing because they're having problems fixing,
Right.
and and Una is technically in charge. Fine, I get that. That makes sense. You've got the chief engineer going, I think something else is going on here. It feels wrong to me.
Right.
And Una gets in a pissing match with Pelia, with her chief engineer, someone whose job it is to know how to fix this shit.
That is
And
true. That is true, Keith. All right, finish your thought because I have a comment.
well, that's the thought. She just refuse. She just shuts down Pelia, refuses to listen to the possibility, and says, "Yeah, if there's something else going on here, we'll find it as we fix the things that are broken."
I actually,
And
first of all, I think we all know towards the end of the episode
yes,
what that's based on.
yes,
Okay, but at the moment, my thought was it's not that Pelia isn't coming up with valuable information, but she's going ahead and doing it without having told Una that she was. So if Una had some, as the XO had set up orders for them to do something, and Pelia had come to her and said, "You know what? I think we ought to do this instead first because of X, Y, and Z." Then I don't think that Una would have had any legs to stand on that her orders were being countermanded. My
well,
feeling was that it was because she was just going ahead and doing whatever the F she wanted to do, regardless of what her orders had been. And that's
right,
how it started.
right, but it goes back before that. They're the very first scene we have of Pelia and Una on the refinery. Basically, Una is saying, "Okay, here's what we're going to do,"
Mm-hmm.
and Pelia is going, "I think there's something more. I think I should go poking around in things," and and Una says, "No, do things the way I said them to do."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking that's not some very good executive officering on
No,
the part of Una.
but it is Una.
It's interesting you bring that up because in the first season, her nickname was "Where Fun Goes to Die," Una, and we never really we didn't get as much of that in the first season.
Hmm.
Um, but because she was they wanted her, I think it was called vigorous management or supervision. Um, and you get she's a bit of a, she's a bit like Pike is the your dad who was like, all right, let me give, like, listen, I'll make you a sandwich and we'll talk about it.
Right. Yeah.
And she's like, be like, okay, here are your orders, crack the whip. She's a bit of a hard ass.
Yeah.
Um, so we finally got to see her sort of be where fun goes to die.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I
and
think that you've got a very good point, Leo, in the sense that you've got very opposite personalities there. You've got
yeah,
Pelia, who is very a free thinker, if nothing
yeah,
else. Okay. And then you've got Una, who's very regimented. So of
yeah,
course they're going to come to blows because they're just such different styles of people. I love the term space hippie, and I thought that
yeah,
was
Yes.
great because it brought me back to the old space hippie episode,
yeah,
the original series. But and you've got crumbs on your uniform. What
yeah.
did you time to eat?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I love, but they do at the end when they're traveling back to
Yeah,
the Enterprise. She points it out, and it's true. And I think that's probably true for a lot of people on the ship. There's still a lot of people are still feeling the loss of Hammer. It says you look at me, and all you see is, all you think of is your dead friend, and
right.
and she understands
Yeah,
why that is. Like she's like, I'm not like, she's not saying you're silly or stupid for feeling that way. She understands.
yeah. She says we can go with the thing about it. You thought that I gave you a C, but
Yeah.
yeah,
She's
but I
like,
also understand that too. Gina says, remember they did the bingo thing. I guess that didn't loosen her up.
I think it may have loosened her up a little bit with Laan, who also seemed. It's funny because in that episode, I thought Laan seemed more like where fun goes to die because
Yeah, really.
she
Yeah,
was she was much more visibly sort of the regimented hard ass.
yeah,
Um, we didn't really get to see as much of Una being the hard ass in season one, but here was a good example of it. And also, so I think Pelia points out, she's like, you're used to being the smartest person in the room. She said, well, I don't think I'm the smartest person in the room. And she's like, just laughs and think, of course you don't
yeah,
do. And she's not wrong because she does have she is genetically sort of, altered to be smarter and faster and,
right,
than regular humans.
right,
Um, that plus her native intelligence.
right.
Um,
And
so
she's also wait, where is it here? Clearly a giantess.
Oh my God, yeah. Well,
I mean, I understand that Pelly is not a tall person, but my
no,
God, in that shot, it's like talk about looking down on somebody. Gee,
really, looks like she's like about to like pick her up and like, throw her into like, says, I'll make bread from your bones.
yes. Tomorrow
uh,
afternoon you may climb me.
yes.
Yeah,
So, but I liked their resolution, and it's interesting. There's one of the early scenes, and we haven't really touched on Uhura, and this sort of leads to Uhura.
no, no, no. I know we should be
Is Uhura goes down into the Narcils, and she's adjusting the communication array,
right.
um, and she Pele comes and says, "What are you doing in my Narsil?" And she's like, "Well, Hammer." I used to ask for adjustments so often. Hammer decided to teach me how to do so. Teach a cadet to fish and all, which I thought was great.
Yeah,
Um, and Pelia says, "I've never, it's funny we've never spoken before." I said, well, that can't be true. She says, "Well, it's true." She says, "Well, welcome to the Enterprise." It's not entirely true. Well, it depends how you look at it. Like after she was assigned to the Enterprise, she may not have talked to her, but she's the one who picked out her accent as being lanthanide
yeah, that's true.
in the first episode. So they have spoken, but I think Pelia must mean since she took over as chief engineer.
Right, right. Yeah,
Um,
and yes, Gina, you are right. Pelly isn't human at all. Actually, I don't think
No.
she's lanthanite, which is an alien species, and yes, they live a very long, indeterminate lifespan.
yeah,
Now, Craig before had agreed with you, Keith, that of course Craig is an engineer, so he was a bit annoyed at Una's attitude toward Pelia. But
I'm
I
thinking,
guess that I guess that makes Una an executive then.
yeah, oh my God.
or a manager at the very
I mean,
least.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm thinking if I'm in charge of the situation, as long as the engineer is telling me what's going on, I'm gonna let the engineer do his engineering thing,
yes, that
because
is very
that's
true, Keith. No, you're right about that.
yeah,
I just think that there's what the resolution is at the end.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
a
Yeah.
At the end, I love that bit. I love that bit, but I just think as the person in charge, I think Una did not do a good job of being in charge by not at least by just completely being dismissive
I don't know.
of what the chief engineer, not only just the chief engineer apparently, but apparently the one who taught Hammer to be an engineer.
Yeah,
So, I
yeah,
got a feeling Pelia wrote the book.
yeah. Well,
So
Well,
how did you like not only getting to see Hammer but also Zombie Hammer?
yeah.
that was cool. Anytime Hammer's on screen is a good time. I mean,
I
I
wanted
don't.
so badly to get a clip of that. Funnily enough, all the clips that have been posted online and from Paramount didn't have Hammer in them, and I'm wondering if they did that on purpose.
I would probably just because like I said, we all heard that he was going to appear sometime,
Right.
but I think they wanted to like very wisely not put that in the trailers or any of the previews because otherwise, like then people will be like, "Oh, is Hemmer back?" And it was a nice reward for those of us who cared about him.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I loved the smile at the end because what we
Yeah,
find out, as everybody knows from having seen it, the resolution is that there are aliens living within the deuterium that they're farming, and by
Mhm.
farming it, they're killing these aliens, and so they're using Uhura's memories and things that are in her brain to try to speak to her in almost like a visual code.
Right.
it was. I like that the idea that because they don't have a shared language, so
Right.
they're like, what if we show her this image and she can figure out what it means? Of course, that's a very difficult way to communicate, but
Yeah.
they do eventually figure it out, and they speak to Sam Kirk, who says, well, talking as well, says, well, there's a little fringe, but there's theories about extra dimensional beings that intrude into ours, and if
Right.
they're intruding and then they're bonding to the deuterium, this would be like we're torturing them, not just killing them, but torturing them.
Right.
They're the Kirk brothers.
Yeah, they're the Kirk brothers in the lab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you notice there were some Gorn skeletons on his on the tables?
Were there really? I didn't know.
Yeah,
Ooh, I gotta find
maybe
those.
not full, but like maybe some of the younger ones, like from
Right.
the episode where we not all those who wander are lost. Was that the episode title from last
I think
season?
so, yeah.
Um,
But yeah,
so
at least it
yeah,
wasn't like the Ferengi skull from Picard's office.
no, it was not. It was not mounted as a trophy. Um,
Yeah.
and we get to see this is also what's interesting is usually especially in old episodes of TOS, female characters were usually in service of male characters. Nurse Chapel was in service of Spock, and might be argued that Yeoman Rand was in service of Kirk.
Right.
They rarely got their own storylines, except for maybe guest stars, but the regular cast. In
Right.
this one, this is about, or a big part of this is about her coming to terms with her grief over losing her family
Mhm.
and losing Hammer. And she's talking about how she's like I threw myself into my work and I do all this and I try not to think about it, but she couldn't then you know she couldn't cope with her grief. She wasn't dealing with it. She was just like locking up. She couldn't even look at pictures of her family
Right.
anymore. But through the process of doing this and with Kirk's help, she learns that it's like that she can. And she at the end of the episode, after all this stuff, let's also talk about we have two crew deaths.
Yeah.
One was I forgot the now. He gets a name, the red shirt, who was either a crew member on the deuterium processing plant, or he was from the Farragut, I believe. Um,
You don't mean
and
Ramon.
Ramon, yeah,
Oh,
Ramon,
okay. Yeah. Okay.
like Ramon, who
Saul Ramon, his name was.
Saul Ramon, and because the aliens were using like people's brains as sort of receivers, and she realizes like, oh, the receivers are burnt out because she's watching one of these old video instructional videos that she made with Hemmer,
Right.
that they're using their brains as receivers, and his burnt out because he couldn't speak anymore. The language and sensors of his brain were burnt out,
Right.
and he's trying to stop the deuterium collection, and everything goes terribly badly, and he dies. But he also kills some yellow shirt, some gold shirt in the corridor,
Yeah.
because at first she looks like she's injured, and they were like, they they say stay with her to the security guard till the medics show up. But then in sickbay, you see him pulling
Chapel pulls the sheet over her. Yeah, I know. It was
the sheet over,
just a
and
simple little moment. Yeah.
yeah, and that was, it was like they're very much in the old way. It's funny because much like in the old TOS show, you know, sort of extras and background actors were, oftentimes, the victim of whatever the peril of the week was.
Right.
Um, and they seem to move on. Like Kirk would be mad for like 30 seconds, and then the rest of the episode would continue.
Yeah.
But in this one, Pike seems genuinely concerned, as he does about everybody. Because even when he's talking with Uhura, when they're trying to figure it out, she's like, well, as your captain, I need you to be at top form, but as your friend, I'm worried about you.
Right.
And so it's she figures out what's going on, and they talk to Sam and they figure out what's going on, and she goes to the bridge. She's Kirk, Captain, you got to stop mining. Well, they got the processing plant up and running for the last 5 minutes. She's like, you got to stop it, and they go up and they can't stop it.
I thought that was great that he listens to her, and he's got a little bit of background information because he knows she's not nuts, and just decides, okay, whatever she says, and then she ends up, she orders the evacuation and ends up blowing it up. But I thought it was cool that he trusted enough in her to take the risk to go with it.
And I just want to point out, because I'm and then I'm going to stop harping on this.
It's okay.
Then I'll let this dog bone go. The difference in command style between Pike and Una, with very little information, basically basically Uhura says, Captain, stop refining. No, we can't. Crap. Evacuate the station, blow it up. Right. And Pike goes, okay. He trusts that his people knows what they're talking about.
Right.
And does it, whereas Una got all pissy with Pelia.
But she's got a reason, though. You gotta. People are fallible.
I get people fell when they're even. Okay, yeah. Fine.
I don't know. I'm just saying.
We'll call it a mistake then from Una.
Mistake. It's fine.
Una has some growth to do before she can ever make captain. Then.
Well, I don't think she ever. Well,
we don't know. We
don't know that.
Yeah. On a non-canonical note, there was a Star Trek comic series put out by IDW, which was basically about number one. She's never given a name, but you see her like as like an ensign and like a lieutenant, and then eventually, getting her own command. It was done by John Byrne. It's in the big John Byrne's Star Trek collection. If you want to pick that up, you can find that on Amazon.
Yeah, and also the Star Trek Legacy series. It's a 3-book series, which is relatively new. All centers around the character of Una. It's a little further down the pike, but it's still within the TOS era. And she actually is a captain in this book. And she's very much a central character in it. So there are some some Una things after.
Yeah, it's non-canonical, but I'd like to think that she goes on to get her own command.
Yeah.
Um, so let's talk a little bit. This is something that happened early in the episode, and we haven't touched on it. Apparently Spock and Chapel. Yeah, there you go. Exactly. You knew where I was going.
I know you too well, Leo.
Yes.
If I don't know you by now, after knowing you since the 7th grade, how could I not?
Yes. So there, Spock and Chapel are playing some 3D chess.
Yep.
And he's like, keeps saying your move, and and it's not just about chess, but they're sort of trying to figure out what they are. And he's saying, well, there are regulations about fraternization, even though she's a civilian, but she's still a member of the crew.
Right.
And she basically describes it like Schrodinger's cat. It's like, we don't know what this is yet. And that's what like a lot of, human relationships are like. But, if you open the box, the whole thing may just collapse.
Right.
And he agrees to that. And then Uhura comes up and she's like trying to figure out what's going on. And Chapel is like, listen, you've got textbook exhaustion, because she's also not been sleeping.
Right.
And she's, everybody always forgets the orders part of doctor's orders, which I thought was a great line. Yeah. That's almost McCoy-esque.
It is. It is. Yeah.
But I love when she's talking to Spock. She's like, well, logic dictates that if this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And then he counters with it. But I think that's how when you talk to a Vulcan, you have to say, logically, shouldn't this, and this work?
Right.
And hopefully you'll appeal to their logic, because he was like, well, I think this is how it's going. So like, I feel like this is what's going on. And he'd be like, feelings are irrelevant,
Yeah.
But if you couch it with logic, they kind of have to be like, address it logically, and maybe agree with you.
Craig says that he thought it was nice to see Chapel and Spock hanging out playing 3D chess.
I did too.
Gina and I were talking. I don't know if Gina's still on watching or not. I think she is. But Schrodinger's, or however you pronounce it, cat, has come up a few times recently in television. And Gina pointed it out to me the other day. It must be a popular theme recently, because do you remember, Gina, what it was that you said? It was in something else. I don't know whether you will. If you think of it, just put it in the comments.
Schrodinger's cat is often been used as a metaphor,
right,
for
what do we got?
The unknown here. So
in the show Hijack. Any of you guys seen Hijack yet?
No. Where's that?
It's pretty good. What is that, on Apple TV? I think. I think it's Apple TV.
I mean,
pretty good though. It got me started. Yep, Apple TV. Thank you, Gina. Thank you. Anyway, so yeah, I liked that scene a lot, and I liked the fact that they continued to move their relationship forward. It seemed, because he kind of agrees with her that if they report it to Starfleet, it's gonna fuck it up. So they might as well just keep going the way they are and see what happens.
Yeah, because I think they're both like unsure as to their future, and if you start reporting it, then it goes, it's like sometimes when you start seeing somebody, thank you, Gina. He was like, oh, I've started seeing somebody, and then it doesn't work out, and they were like, oh, what happened? And they were like, oh, well, I think they're both trying to figure it out. I do like them together. I'm sort of torn, because I quite like T'Pring, or the way T'Pring has been portrayed.
Yes.
She's much more sympathetic. She was a bit of a sort of a schemer and a conniver in the original series.
Right.
Not without her reasons, but she you were unsure if she even cared for Spock.
Right.
Whereas this T'Pring seems to care for Spock, and to the point where she's like, you told everybody else except for me, and I don't have, like, I think we should take a break from each other.
Right.
That's
really hurt her. For a race of people that don't pride themselves on their feelings, you can tell that really hurt her.
Yeah.
He wouldn't admit that to her and bring her in to that circle, which I think was interesting.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, I agree with you, Leo. I think that the actress playing T'Pring has been great. I love that we're seeing the character, and you know what? there's enough that they're doing with it that it could lead easily into the argument, because it's an argument she has that
Yeah.
Starfleet is too much of a thing for Spock,
Yeah.
and it's distracting. And when we see her in the original series, that's part of her argument.
Yeah.
You were never here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's a fair cop. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
it's kind of hard to be married or in a relationship with somebody if they're not around. So it is, you know,
Craig says Spock is doing a Betty and Veronica.
they kind of are. They
Yeah.
kind of are.
Yeah.
They've even got the hair colors kind of close.
Yeah.
All right,
Oh,
white instead
exactly.
of yellow, but
Yeah.
Well, I mean, she's sort of a platinum blonde, I would say, in this.
Yeah.
I
I'm digging it. I love her look. I gotta say.
Yeah. I also, just as a note, I love that that Uhura goes to the bar and orders a sari and brandy.
Yes, I did too.
And they had the bottle. They had the
Yep.
the classic sari and brandy bottle. Uh,
I liked all the scenes in the bar. I thought the
yeah.
bar. I would. I don't know why. It's because of habit. I'd love for the bar to have a name. I know it doesn't, and neither does it need to. Um, but I love the look of it. I think it's great. I love the cracked glass panels in the door.
Yeah.
I
the
think
look of
that's
this,
very 60s, very
I,
50s, 60s, and I
I
love.
was thinking that too. That there's a very retro 60s slash 50s vibe to this bar.
Yeah.
that I
It's kind of a
love
mid-century
it.
slash mod vibe to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly right.
And which we've seen a little bit because in season one, when Nurse Chapel is on her, calling it a date is a bit of extension because this guy that she meets up and they have sex, you know, and she's very happy with that arrangement. And he's
Yeah.
like, and the guy starts saying like, "Well, we should have dinner. We should," and she's like, "Oh, you're killing me," and
Yeah.
but she's wearing this black and white dress, which is a very mod look, and one I find particularly compelling is a
Uh-huh.
fashion. I've
Yeah.
I've always had a bit of a soft spot for that mod look.
Yeah.
Um, so I think they're leaning. There's it's a slicker mid-century vibe. Um, not, there's not no wood paneling, but not nearly as much as you would see in a mid-century
No,
sort of.
they saved the wood paneling for Pike's bathroom. Did you notice
Yes,
last week?
yeah,
Gorgeous, like mahogany paneling he had in his bathroom.
he does.
My
Maybe
God.
he has a sauna in there. I don't know.
Maybe, who knows?
Uh,
By the way, here is, we talked about this last week, and I was sitting there going, "Oh my God, have they made the engine room J.J. Abrams huge?" And it wasn't, of course. It was the station,
Yeah.
the collection platform, which made me very happy because I was like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think that looks way too big to be on the Enterprise.
On the Enterprise, yeah.
So I got a question now. Put that picture back up for a second,
Okay.
please. First off, cool picture. I love the visual. Every individual, but it's obviously the AR wall going on here.
Sure.
And I'm starting to feel like the AR wall is being a little bit overdone. It's cool every time we see it, but it's starting that whenever I see an image, I like this, I go, oh, the AR wall.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just starting to feel like they're using it a little bit too much.
I'm gonna disagree with you, Keith, because I think, like back in the day, that would have been a matte painting.
Right.
And I think because it's not a matte painting, they're not locked into one angle. Like they can pan, they can move, and that is dark enough that a lot of the details were sort of obscured. What I've had, this was to me one of the uses of AR, the AR wall, in this episode, or hers having her flashbacks, and there's when she's dreaming and she wakes up and she's like in some wooded area, some sort of natural setting. There's a ridge of trees and it's a bit cloudy, and there's this cloud, and you hear that weird sort of electronic noise,
Right.
which slightly reminiscent of V'ger, but not exactly.
Right.
But
Right.
it has that kind of like, I'm sure there's a name for that noise, and not being a sound aficionado, I have no idea what it is. But later on, she has the same vision, and then she turns and she sees the shuttle crash.
Shuttlecraft, yeah.
Now, what's interesting is like the ridge of trees overcast sky. I'm like, that's very clearly Canada, which is where they shoot it.
Right.
But then they pan over to the shuttlecraft, a lot more green. You see this sort of modern setting in the background, and then and the tree looked like an African tree. It didn't look
Yeah.
like, something in the Yukon there. And I thought that was a good use because the whole thing had a slightly dreamlike quality to it.
Right.
They're sort of leaping in these moments. So I think it allows them to do that sort of stuff. Um, Back in the
Yeah.
day,
I
it
mean,
was matte paintings and
well,
then painted backgrounds.
I didn't really fully understand the AR wall until it was explained to me one or two ready rooms ago. I think it was
Yes.
an Anton Mount interview where he talked a lot about it and
Yeah.
to work on it and stuff. But I thought in the Rigel 7 episode, it was used really well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
I thought that you saw these huge icy landscapes that went off, and it just I don't know. I think it's a very cool technology.
I think
I,
it's a cool
I
technology too. I'm just starting to notice when it
No,
happens.
and that's a fair enough observation, Keith. I get it. I mean, I first read about it in Mandalorian, and it blew my mind because I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking, oh, they went to Tunisia and they shot all this shit and built these sets, and it's like, no, 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 they didn't. You know, they're
I
doing
mean,
it on page, and that just blew me away because I thought that that was seamless in them.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad to see
I
that I'm not using it.
Yeah, I mean, I am too because you can have a set that is much larger than it would be feasible to build.
Right,
Um, and or like I said, if it was a matte painting or a background painting, like they used to do, like backdrops,
right,
if you recall from the cage when when they're horseback riding and there's some trees there,
yeah,
fake trees and
yeah,
fake grass, and there's this sort of city in the background, and it's very clearly painted on some canvas.
right.
It was. I mean, it didn't take me out of it, but
No,
compared to the way things are done now,
but
I,
That's
those,
true.
yeah, but then you also have, there's a very big difference between the episodes of TOS that were shot on location
yes.
or on a studio lot and the ones that were shot on stage 6 with all the big foam rocks and
Yeah,
the glowing green backgrounds. And yeah, so yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean that is the trick to get. I don't know how expensive using the AR wall is. I mean, I'm sure it's not. Clearly nothing is free, but it does allow you. You're not beholden. It's not like, well, we're going to have rain for the next 5 days. Uh,
He says he needs to build an AR wall for Keith.
Yes, yes, you do. Please do.
Yeah, I would love to have an AR wall.
sure.
So I did think it was interesting, and I'm gonna rip this off from Ready Room, but in the Anton Mount tongue tied interview, he was talking about how the backdrop on the AR wall moves with the camera. So as a performer, when you're standing on that, you have to focus on something that's not moving. Otherwise, you get very dizzy. And I was
It,
thinking about years ago going to what was it, the O Canada expedition thing in Epcot, and it was a 360-degree movie screen thing, and they had bars, and you held on to those bars so you wouldn't get dizzy and lose your balance. And that's sort of what that reminded me of because I'm
was
thinking,
that like one of those like flying the flying thing they
it
have at?
wasn't, no, it wasn't the flying thing. It was just it was to show you that you could film something in 360 degrees. So all it was there were there's a mount actually on the camera rig, and it's got cameras bump 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 going all around
Right.
in a circle, and then they film simultaneously. So when it's, I mean, so there were some flying shots, but also some shots on a city street in Quebec or something like that, and then you could look around you, and 360 degrees around you there was an image. Uh,
Neat.
it's not there anymore. They put
Mm.
something else in, some strange thing with Martin Short. But at any rate, but yeah. It's cool.
Only Murders in the Building, the ride.
There you
Uh,
go.
I would go on that ride.
I would go on
Uh,
that ride too. I would too. Hey guys, we got 10 minutes. What did we miss?
The
let's,
ending.
The ending. Let's talk about the ending. Excellent choice.
well, we've talked a little bit about the lead up to the ending, where Uhura is sitting there with Kirk, and she's showing him pictures of her family, and
Right.
she said, like, my mom could always knew how to make me laugh, and she can finally look at these pictures because she couldn't look at them for years
Right.
because of the grief, and
Right.
this experience has sort of let her be, uh, let her go back and enjoy them, rather than being overwhelmed by the grief.
Yeah.
And of course, Sam comes over and he's like, "I'm going to write a paper about this," and he says, "Listen, Jim, I just want to say, I'm proud of you. The Farragut is lucky to have you, and congratulations." He said, "Well, thank you."
Yeah.
And he's looking at him. Sam's looking at Kirk. He was like, and they're both looking, like, Kirk has this look like, and Sam is like,
Looking at him like, and you're going to say,
yeah. And he's like, and of course Kirk doesn't. And I think it is in the way that sometimes the people we're closest to, we treat them in a way, we're not aware that we're treating them badly, but we feel like, well, I shouldn't have to say this because they
Right.
know how I feel.
yeah.
And he is furious because instead of saying, like, I'm sorry I made fun of your science came and saved the day. Your dad should be proud of everything you do.
Right.
None of that,
Right.
because apparently dad is not proud of Sam
Yeah.
despite
Yeah.
his accomplishments, and he's just like fed up. Takes the cookie. Now, this cookie showed up early in the episode. The cookies, like, they had real cookies in the mess hall,
Right.
like not like replicated ones.
Right.
He says, and he goes, "Well, I got the last one," and she then was like, "To hell with your fucking cookie."
Yeah. Right.
Like, I think I figured this out.
Yeah.
But they're still saying there. Apparently, he put the cookie down and brought it, and the cookie's sitting on the table in between them. And Sam is like, "Fine, you don't respect me. I'm going to take your cookie, motherfucker."
Yeah.
And he and Uhura's kind of like, "What is going on here?" But then, and he also left his drink. Like, he came over with a drink. He
Yeah,
finished
he
it. He put
swigs
it
it
down.
down and leaves the glass there. Yeah.
Spock shows up to pick up the glass in his now well-established fastidious manner of cleaning up after Sam Kirk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Uhura introduces, he says, "Oh, Mr. Spock, this is Jim Kirk." And
Right.
they shake hands for the first time. It's a nice shot.
Yeah.
And so
Kirk says, "Join us," and he sits down.
and yeah, they sit down,
Yeah.
and it's a shot of pull back shot of the three of them sitting there beginning to chat. And that was a great last shot. Three younger versions of these iconic characters.
Right.
Spock and Kirk meeting for the first time. That's a big thing. Her, met Kirk earlier and had had their adventure together. And it was a wonderful little moment. I liked it. I also liked, as an aside, the jazz band. George Kirk almost gave Jim Kirk a Klingon stare.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I loved the use of the jazz.
I like the live band there. Yeah.
It
That
did
was-
take me for a moment thinking, well, I guess we're not going to see Riker in here playing that, liquor stick. But yeah,
No, but yeah,
it was good. It was nice. Great music.
it was a lovely little moment. I liked the everything that was going on with them. Um, uh, I would say that bar doesn't feel like it's big enough for the crew. Like, I mean, I guess not everybody's going there at the same time, obviously, but
Right.
it feels like maybe there are other rooms that branch off that we don't see.
Well, think about the original series Rec Room.
Yeah,
I mean, how big was that? It was the conference room. It was the same set.
yeah, they just redressed it.
Yeah.
That rec room was like, there were like some chess sets and checker sets and and other stuff on. Like, it was like, well, we're millions of miles from home, so
Yeah.
let's get a couple of checker set that'll amuse everybody.
Yeah. We'll put 3 food replicators in this room where the whole crew would come and hang out.
It's right. We've never really seen. Well, I said that's not true. In Discovery, we got to see a mess hall. They had a mess hall.
Yeah.
Um, in the original series, there wasn't really a mess hall. There was the rec room where people ate.
Right.
Sometimes, you know, Kirk would be brought, or somebody would be brought a meal at their workstation.
Right.
Um, TOS had 10-4 where people would eat, but it seemed like people ate in their quarters. There wasn't a general meeting area like where people are like, hey, meet me at other than 10-4, we're like, let's meet there for a meal because you could order food there.
Right.
Um, and I mean, I guess Deep Space Nine, Siska would occasionally cook a meal, which was nice. But
Right.
there was Quarks. There was the Klingon restaurant.
Right.
Uh, but it was more like there were places people go, but there was not a mess hall.
Well,
And
and that made sense because it was basically like they were living in a giant airport in space.
they were all they
There
were.
were things to amuse people on their way from one place to another. It made a lot of sense.
We got to see what there was one in Voyager, and with Neelix cooking up his weirdo meals.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I found an egg, Mr. Vulcan.
I was like, that every time I said Mr. Vulcan, it sounded like a hate crime.
I know it
It,
did. It did. It really
it's
did.
like it's just like I've got a name.
Yeah, I've got to name you, wormy little bastard. Yeah. Anyway,
I have a
something else.
question for you, Chris. I have a
Yes.
question for you. So, Pelia, does she still annoy you?
Yeah, but
Okay.
it's okay. It's okay. She wasn't as annoying in this episode, and I
Oh, yeah.
liked, and I will give you this. I liked the moment at the end between the two of them in the shuttlecraft very much. There was some actual acting going on there, which I liked, as opposed to just doing this arch taxi ripoff voice that she does the rest of the time. So I thought that she did a really nice job with that scene. And I don't know why. Oh, Carol King. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I did like her comment about Hammer. She's like, "Oh, he's one of my best students." She's like, well, "That's not true. He was just okay. I
yeah,
only said that because he was dead."
dead. Yeah, I know.
She
Yeah,
says, she said, "But look what he made of himself."
yeah. I did think if I had to stack up all of her appearances in the series, that this was my favorite of all of her appearances in it, and partially because it had an opportunity for there to be something of depth with her at the end, which I thought was very nice. And quite frankly, I was on the opposite side of the fence with you, Keith. I was sitting there thinking, wow, I wrote this to Leo at like 2:30 in the morning. I wrote, well, I guess Una likes Pelia just as much as I do. And Leo writes back to me, be nice. Yeah. But at any rate, but it was a good episode. It was, and
It was a good episode.
when I read the description of it, where it said Uhura gets aid from an unexpected source, I thought, oh God, it's not going to be the two of them running around the whole time. That's going to drive me nuts. And it was Kirk, so that was great.
Yes. Yeah.
But, yeah.
I think it was a nice judicious use of Kirk. I'm not sure we're going to see him again this season.
Right.
No, I mean, I like the actor. I think he's doing a good job, Paul Wesley.
I
But
think we are going to see him again.
maybe we might. Maybe one more time.
One more time, because we have to have the drink between La'an and Kirk.
Yeah,
it might be that might be in the last episode. Maybe they're at Starbase, and you get they meet each other somewhere at a cafe or a bar.
Here's a prediction question for you guys, and for the audience too. Do you think that someday this character of James Kirk is going to command the Enterprise?
Oof, could be. I don't know.
I think they're leading into that somehow. It's just a gut feeling I get.
Yeah. He does like the ship. I mean, the first thing he says when he transports aboard this thing is, "Wow, nice ship you've got here."
Yeah,
so,
quite a ship.
I always think it's fun.
Nice ship you've got here. I think I'll take it for my own.
Yeah, no, you bring up an interesting point, Keith, and I always think it's funny that people beam onto the Enterprise, and this is true in TOS too. They beam onto the Enterprise, they look around the transporter room, which is nothing really to look at.
Right.
And then they go, "Impressive ship, Captain." And it's like, why? Why are you saying that in this little closet of a room that you beam into? But I don't know.
It is shiny. The new
It's
transporter pad is very shiny.
I'll
It
give
is.
Shiny.
I'll give, but even in the old show, even the original show, you'd have somebody would come beam on and be like, "Oh, fine ship you have here, cat."
Well, you've got those colored panels behind you. I mean, not every transporter room has that. I mean,
I know.
my closet doesn't have that.
No, that's true. You're right about that.
You know, before we sign off, I want to share something. Angela, our friend of the show, Angela, who is in New
Yes.
York, I saw her. I'm going to have lunch with her tomorrow, and Craig,
Oh, nice.
another friend of the show. And she brought me something. Remember, she went to the screening of the beginning of Picard a
Yes.
number of months ago, and she brought me this poster. Let's see if you can see it of the
Oh,
cast.
nice.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's very cool.
Yeah,
So,
very cool.
so I thought I'd share that. Thank you, Angela.
Yeah,
I know she's
it's very cool.
she's at her book club tonight. But if you watch this later on, thank you for sharing that with us, or with me specifically. I shared it with everybody else.
Yeah.
But just for a second. So, but I'm quite enjoying this. Let's see. I had there were a couple of other. Let me see if there were any other notes. The nebula they were in was called Bannon's Nebula, which was named in honor of Melissa Navia's late partner Brian Bannon, who passed away a few years ago.
Right.
This was the first time we've seen Bassard collectors in action. They've been mentioned but never seen.
Yes.
Let's see. The idea. At the end, Pike asks Uhura to hail Admiral Nagura, which is actually, we thought it sounded like Nagura, which was Kirk mentioned in the motion picture, but it actually said Admiral Nagawa. Now, I don't know if I am assuming those are two different admirals.
It's interesting because that was my first thought as well, because
yes,
the one that he fights with to remain in command of the Enterprise, you end up hearing about him in a couple of other Star Trek novels that deal with the movie era. But I think you're right. I think it was a different character. Craig says, yes, as much as I love this series, that last scene kind of made me want to see Kirk as captain with the Star Trek original series characters.
Here's a question, a serious question. When Stranger Worlds, assuming that they do as many seasons as they can,
right?
Do you think they would do almost a reboot of the original series with Paul Wesley as Kirk, Ethan Peck as Spock, Rose Gooding as Uhura, and so on, filling out the rest of the cast, and do a run or
I
a
know
movie?
I'd watch it, and
I would too.
So it's a question of whether they feel that canonically they have to do the refit of the Enterprise in order to do that, but you could just spruce up some of the sets a little bit to make them a tiny bit smaller, but that was really about it.
It's funny. I think some people have a criticism of Stranger Worlds because they're breaking canon. They're doing this, and the problem with canon is it locks you in to a certain a certain look, a certain way the characters act. I don't think any of the characters are acting so differently that they're unrecognizable. I think they're all very recognizable as those characters.
I agree.
And that's the problem is it's funny because Spock was in Amok Time who's her says about T'Pring, who she may have met. I mean, I don't think they ever had any scenes together, but she's been on the Enterprise a whole bunch.
Who?
Chapel's met, no, but also her, has been on the Enterprise at the same time. She goes,
yes,
Spock, she's lovely. Who's she? He's like,
yeah, right.
And he goes, T'Pring is my wife, and there's blah, 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 and it's like, on a certain sense, it breaks canon, but I'll be honest, I'm fine with that because the old show canon was pretty loose, because we saw T'Pring once. T'Pring never came back. The only one of the only characters who came back more than once as a featured player
Was
was Mud. Um, and each one was. I mean, it's set in the same universe, same character, same ship, all that stuff. But
yeah,
each one is almost separate from each other
yeah,
because every time there was a new Klingon, there was a Klingon captain. We didn't get to see the same Klingon captain over and over again.
right.
We saw different Klingon
We were
captains.
supposed to though at one point.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think they were in
yeah.
scheduling. As that sort of thing
The
happens.
guy who played him first was supposed to come back a second time, and they couldn't.
John
Yeah,
Colicos.
couldn't fit it into his schedule. But yeah, he wanted to too.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
but I think canon. I don't want to be so locked into canon that's going to prevent me from enjoying good stories.
I agree. And quite frankly, as long as Paramount can get their money together and stay a viable streaming service, I would watch a whole series, 4 or 5 seasons of Strange New Worlds, and then I'd go right into the Enterprise with the original characters. I'd be happy to see that.
I
I
yeah,
would
it'd
be
be.
happy. I would be
You
happy.
sound super happy the way you said that, Keith.
Well, no. What you
I
might
would
be
be
hearing in
happy.
the what you might be hearing in the background noise is my grinding as I'm just thinking through this.
Yeah.
Yes, I would love to see that. I don't know that they will though. I mean, I think what we will get in the if if they carry it out to the logical conclusion of Strange New Worlds,
Right.
I think we will get an episode of the new crew
Yeah, I think you're right.
taking over the Enterprise, and
Yeah.
that will my guess is, as much as I would love to see a new take on TOS, I don't think they're going to do that.
No,
If they
I
do
think
anything, it's going to be that new legacy series on the other end of the time frame with Seven and that group.
Yeah. Well, it's you're
I agree. I think you're right, Keith. I think that'll probably be your series finale.
Mm-hmm.
where
And
Kirk where Kirk sits in the big chair.
Yeah, right.
That's
what I imagine. And then it's just a question of whether there's enough fan support to do another series. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's.
I
I mean,
would
also
love it.
everything is on hold, of course, because of
Right.
the strikes.
But
So
I imagine that will get resolved between now and what would be like 5 seasons from now.
one would hope.
We'll be watching old Flintstone episodes. So
Listen, I'm already balls deep in the Flintstones.
there you go.
Uh,
Yikes!
uh,
Put an image in my head.
there you go.
Anyway,
Yabba dabba don't.
yeah, we actually are 7 minutes over, which is fine.
Okay.
We had some good things to say at the end. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. This was a lot
Thank
of
you,
fun.
everybody.
I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to next week because it's
Yes.
the crossover.
Those old scientists. Those
old
old
scientists.
scientists.
Yeah.
Those old scientists.
That should be
Yes.
interesting. That should be
Yeah. I'm very much looking forward to it. It will most definitely be a humorous episode.
Yeah.
And I'm I'm curious to see how they get there and what's going to go on. And
Yeah.
you know,
I'm curious to see what the sciencing of the whole thing is, but it'll be
yeah.
fun. Yeah. So, all right, gents, I'm going to throw us out of here and we will
All
see
right.
you all. Live long and prosper, folks. We will see you next week at the same time and have a wonderful week, everybody. Try to stay cool.